If you've ever planted a garden in spring, felt proud of yourself, and then watched the whole thing fade into a patchy, tired mess by August, you are not alone. Most gardeners are sold on color for May and June, and then left staring at bare soil, wondering what went wrong. The problem isn't you. The problem is the plants. In this video, I'm going to show you 13 long-lasting perennials you can plant right now in June, plants that don't just look good for a week and disappear. These are the ones that carry your garden from early summer all the way through to fall, come back stronger every single year, and ask almost nothing from you in return. You won't need a horticulture degree, you won't need to water every other day, and you definitely won't need to dig them up every autumn and start again. And make sure you stay until the end, because the last plant on this list is a hidden gem that most gardeners have never even considered, and it might be the one that completely changes your garden. Now, before we get into the list, here's why you should trust it. These 13 plants weren't pulled from a random seed catalog. They were chosen based on 3 things: proven performance across a wide range of U.S. climate zones, genuine low-maintenance credentials, meaning they don't need constant deadheading, staking, or fussing, and real feedback from gardeners who've grown them in actual backyards, not test gardens. I've also made plenty of expensive planting mistakes over the years, so I've already done the trial and error. Every plant here passed the simplest test there is: plant it, mostly leave it alone, and see if it still looks good in late September. These 13 passed. The ones that didn't make the list are the reason most gardeners feel like they're bad at this, when really, they just chose the wrong plants. That stops today.
Plant number 1. Salvia nemorosa, woodland sage. Let's start with one that earns its place in every garden it touches, and once you see it flowering, you'll wonder why it took you so long. Salvia nemorosa, commonly known as woodland sage or garden salvia, is one of the most reliably beautiful perennials you can put in the ground. It sends up dense, upright spikes of violet-blue flowers from late spring, and here's the part that matters: if you give it a light trim after the first flush, it will flower again in late summer. Twice. For free. That's the lazy gardener benefit right there. One trim with a pair of scissors in early July, and you get a second wave of color just when the rest of your border starts to look tired. It's hardy in USDA zones 4 through 8, which covers a huge portion of the country, from the Pacific Northwest to the Mid-Atlantic. Plant in June once the soil is reliably warm. Full sun is ideal, but it handles light afternoon shade without drama. It also shrugs off summer drought better than most perennials, which means less worrying and more enjoying. Here's something most people don't know: the real move with salvia is to plant it in drifts, groups of 3 or 5 plants rather than a single stem. Odd-numbered groupings look more natural, and the effect in the flower is genuinely breathtaking compared to a single plant poking up among everything else. Try it once, and you'll never go back. Every time this plant blooms, it reminds you that some of the most reliable things in a garden are also the most beautiful. Not complicated, just good. Coming up next, a plant so cheerful it's practically impossible to have a bad day when it's in bloom. And it blooms for months. Plant number 2, Echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower. If you could only grow one perennial for the rest of your life, this would be a very strong argument. Echinacea purpurea, the purple coneflower, is one of those plants that give and never ask for much in return. The blooms open in June or July, and a single plant will keep producing flowers for 8 to 10 weeks, which in garden terms is an eternity. The daisy-like flowers have that iconic drooping pink-purple ring around a raised, spiky orange-brown center, and they're genuinely beautiful in a way that doesn't feel fussy or formal. Here's the lazy gardener win: you don't even need to deadhead it. Leave the spent cones on the plant through fall and winter, and 2 things happen. First, goldfinches and other seed-eating birds use it as a free bird feeder right through the cold months. Second, it self-seeds gently, meaning you'll get new plants popping up nearby for nothing, slowly expanding your display without you lifting a finger. It's native to North American prairies, so it's genuinely at home here, hardy in zones 3 through 9. June planting is ideal. It'll establish through the summer and be well settled before its first hard winter. One thing worth knowing: the named varieties can be tempting. There are white, orange, yellow, and even double-flowered forms on the market, but the plain, straight species, Echinacea purpurea, is actually more vigorous and longer-lived than most of the fancy-bred cultivars. The simpler version does the job better. Sometimes the original is the best. There's something quietly satisfying about watching birds feed on a plant that also made your garden beautiful all summer. That's the kind of return most plants can only dream of. Next up, a plant that cascades, that smells wonderful, and that requires you to do approximately nothing to keep it looking brilliant. Plant number 3, Nepeta X Fossini, Catmint. If you've been spending money on lavender and watching it die, try Catmint instead. It does everything lavender does, but with considerably less drama. Nepeta X Fossini, or Catmint, is a low-growing, spreading perennial that produces clouds of small lavender blue flowers from June onwards. The foliage is soft and silver-green, with a gentle herby scent when you brush past it. The bees are completely obsessed with it. And unlike lavender, it doesn't go woody and die on you after a couple of winters. Here's the lazy gardener moment. Shear it back by half after the first flowering in June or July. Use a pair of garden shears, take about 30 seconds, and come back in 4 to 6 weeks to find it covered in a second flush of flowers. It's one of the most forgiving plants in the garden. Cut it hard, and it bounces back harder. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, it loves hot, sunny spots and performs beautifully in the dry summers of the Midwest. It resists drought well once established, which makes it a genuinely low-effort choice even through a hot American summer. Here's something most people miss with Catmint: don't be in a rush to cut it back in the fall. The seed heads hold their form, the foliage fades to a warm gray, and the whole plant takes on an architectural quality that keeps the border looking considered rather than abandoned. Leave it until early spring, then cut it back as new growth emerges. Brushing past a flowering catmint edge on a warm evening, catching that gentle herby scent, it's one of those small garden pleasures that costs almost nothing and feels genuinely luxurious. Right, we've done soft and cascading. Let's talk about something bold, reliable, and gloriously unstoppable. Plant number 4. Hemerocallis, Daylily. Don't let the name fool you. Yes, each individual flower lasts only one day. But a single daylily plant will open dozens of blooms in succession, keeping color going for 4 to 6 solid weeks. Hemerocallis, the daylily, is one of the most bomb-proof plants in existence. This is the plant that grows happily in the abandoned corner of a garden for 30 years without anyone paying it any attention. It divides itself, slowly spreads, handles drought, handles neglect, and comes back every June without fail to put on a proper show. The lazy gardener's win is straightforward. Daylilies don't need deadheading because each spent bloom drops cleanly on its own. They don't need staking. They don't need winter protection. You plant them once, split them every 4 or 5 years when they get overcrowded, and use the divisions to fill the rest of your border for free. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, that's almost the entire country. They're particularly popular across the South and Midwest, where summer heat is intense, because daylilies shrug off heat that would collapse most other perennials. If you want real drama beyond the standard orange, look for the variety Chicago Apache, a deep, velvety red, or Franz Hals, a stunning bicolored orange and yellow. Both are widely available, both are as tough as the common types, and both stop people in their tracks when they walk past your garden. There's something almost defiant about a daylily, the way it just quietly gets on with it, no matter what the summer throws at it. Gardens need more of that energy. Alright, next is a plant that practically defines the look of a healthy American garden in late summer. Plant number 5. Rudbeckia fulgida, Black-Eyed Susan. If there's one plant that defines the look of a thriving summer garden, it's this one. Rudbeckia fulgida, Black-Eyed Susan, is a true workhorse of a perennial. Golden yellow daisy flowers with a dark chocolate brown center, produced in extraordinary abundance from July through to October. The variety Goldsturm is particularly reliable, forming dense, spreading clumps that get better with each passing year. What makes it a lazy gardener's best friend? It flowers for 3 to 4 months without you doing anything to it. No deadheading needed. The old flowers develop into attractive brown seed heads that feed birds in winter and look genuinely handsome when frosted. It also spreads at a sensible pace, slowly filling gaps in a border so you never have to buy more plants to patch bare spots. It's native to North America and extremely well adapted here, hardy in zones 3 through 9. It performs particularly well in the eastern and central states where hot summers and cold winters are the norm. This is a genuine native plant choice, which means it's working with your local ecosystem, not against it. Here's a planting trick that looks almost professionally designed. Put Rudbeckia in front of ornamental grasses. The golden flowers against the warm tones of grasses like Pennisetum or Calamagrostis in late summer create a tapestry effect that photographs beautifully, and neither plant needs any special care to pull it off. Walking past a drift of black-eyed Susans in August, watching the bees work through them flower by flower, it's impossible not to feel like you've done something right. Now, let's move to something that makes a garden look instantly cared for, no matter what else is going on around it. Plant number 6, Leucanthemum X Superbum, Shasta Daisy. There are some plants that carry a kind of quiet confidence in the garden. They don't shout. They don't demand. They just show up, look exactly right, and make everything around them look better. Shasta Daisy is one of those plants. Leucanthemum X Superbum, the Shasta Daisy, produces classic white daisies with a sunny yellow center on upright stems that reach 2 to 3 feet tall. They bloom from June right through August and have a clean, bright quality that lifts the look of any border they're in. Planted in bold clumps, they're genuinely dramatic. In a cottage-style mix, they feel completely at home. Unlike many tall perennials, Shasta daisies don't flop dramatically. They hold themselves upright without staking in most conditions. The variety Becky is the most upright and reliable choice. It was actually selected by a Georgia nurseryman specifically to handle hot, humid American summers, so it's more heat-tolerant than older Shasta varieties that could struggle in the South. Hardy in zones 4 through 9. If you deadhead spent flowers, it takes just moments, and you extend the flowering season by several weeks. But even if you don't bother, they'll keep producing at their natural pace without complaint. Here's something worth knowing if you want more plants for free. Shasta daisies are one of the easiest perennials to propagate. In spring, simply dig up a clump, pull it apart into sections. Each section just needs a few shoots and some roots, and replant. One plant bought for a few dollars can become 10 plants within 2 seasons. That's not a bad return. There's a quality to white daisies that never dates. They've been in gardens for 100 years, and they'll be there for 100 more, because some things are simply right. Coming up, one of the most beloved ground-covering perennials in the world, and the one that professional garden designers reach for more than almost anything else. Plant number 7. Geranium Roseanne, hardy geranium. If there is one perennial that professional garden designers reach for more than any other, it's this one. And once you grow it, you'll understand why immediately. Geranium Roseanne is a hardy geranium, completely different from the tender pelargoniums you'd grow in pots, that produces a ceaseless flow of violet-blue flowers with a white eye from June all the way through to the first frosts of fall. That's 4 to 5 months of near-continuous color from a single plant. The mounded habit means it tumbles beautifully over path edges, spills between other plants, and fills gaps naturally wherever you put it. You do nothing. No deadheading. No staking. No dividing every few years. Just plant it, water it through its first summer, and then step back and let it perform. Hardy in zones 4 through 8, it thrives across a huge range of American conditions, from the Pacific Northwest to the Northeast and the cooler parts of the South. One of the things that makes Roseanne particularly useful is that it tolerates partial shade. If you have a spot that gets 3 to 4 hours of sun rather than full sun all day, most perennials will sulk there. Roseanne just gets on with it and still flowers beautifully. Roseanne is a registered variety, which means you can't propagate it yourself. It's sold as a specific clone. But you don't need to. One plant grows surprisingly large over 3 to 4 years and doesn't need to be divided to stay healthy. Your initial investment just keeps on giving, season after season. Watching a Roseanne come back every spring, growing a little wider and a little more generous each year, it starts to feel less like a plant and more like a reliable friend. And those are worth holding on to. We're halfway through. Next, something that takes hot, dry, sunny borders and turns them into something that looks as if it were designed by someone who really knew what they were doing. Plant number 8. Achillea millefolium, Yarrow. If your garden has a hot, dry, sunny spot where other plants sulk and die, Yarrow was made for it. Genuinely. Achillea millefolium, Yarrow, has flat-topped flower heads in a range that spans white, yellow, terracotta, pink, and deep cherry red, depending on the variety. It has ferny, aromatic foliage and blooms from June right through into September. It's been used in gardens for centuries, and not because it's fashionable, but because it actually works. The lazy gardener wins here: drought resistance. Once yarrow is established, typically after its first full season, it barely needs watering. It evolved on dry hillsides and stony ground, so the hot, baked soil that punishes everything else in a south-facing border is exactly what this plant considers ideal conditions. You could go away for 2 weeks in July and come back to find it looking completely unfazed. Hardy in zones 3 through 9, one of the most drought-tolerant perennials on this entire list, making it a star performer in the dry summers of California, the Southwest, and the Great Plains. It also handles the cold of the upper Midwest and Northeast without any protection. Here's a bonus that not enough people take advantage of: yarrow is one of the best plants for a cutting garden. The flat-topped flower heads dry brilliantly. Harvest them just as the heads are fully open, hang them upside down in a warm, dry space, and within 2 weeks, you have dried flowers that hold their color for months indoors. It's a beautiful bonus on top of an already generous plant. There's real satisfaction in growing something that thrives on a little benign neglect. Yarrow seems to reward you more the less you fuss over it. Number 9 is for the gardeners with a shaded spot, a damp corner, or a north-facing area that feels like a lost cause. It isn't. Plant number 9. Astilbe, false spirea. Every garden has a problem corner. A spot that doesn't get much sun. A patch that stays damp longer than everywhere else. The place where you've given up trying. Astilbe was built for exactly that spot. Astilbe, sometimes called false spirea, produces plumes of feathery flowers in vivid pinks, deep reds, white, and lilac from June into August. The foliage is dark, glossy, and ferny-looking even when the plant isn't in flower, which means it earns its space from the moment it emerges in spring. And in fall, the dried plumes turn a warm russet brown and hold their shape for months, giving you winter structure in a spot that most other plants simply abandon. Here's the lazy gardener benefit: Astilbe handles damp soil that would rot the roots of almost everything else on this list. If you have a low-lying area, a spot near a water feature, or soil that just doesn't drain perfectly, most perennials struggle there. Astilbe not only tolerates it, but it genuinely prefers it. It's the solution to one of gardening's most frustrating problems. Hardy in zones 3 through 8, it's best suited to the eastern states and the Pacific Northwest, where soil moisture is more consistently available. In hot, dry regions, it needs a shadier spot and regular watering, but in normal American garden conditions, it's remarkably self-sufficient. One thing to do: don't cut Astilbe plumes back in fall. Leave them standing right through winter. The russet brown dried plumes, especially when covered in frost, are genuinely beautiful, and they provide shelter for overwintering insects. Cut them back in early spring just as new growth emerges, and you'll appreciate this plant through all 4 seasons rather than just 2. That shady, damp corner you've been apologizing for? Give it an Astilbe. By this time next year, it might actually become your favorite part of the garden. Plant number 10. Nymphophea, red-hot poker. Some plants add color. This plant adds drama. Nymphophea, known as red-hot poker or torch lily, produces bold, upright flower spikes that emerge like lit torches, typically bicolored with hot red or orange at the tip, fading to yellow at the base. They stand 2 to 4 feet tall, depending on the variety, and they bloom from June into September. Hummingbirds are completely addicted to them. In a mixed border, they make a statement that very few other perennials can match. The lazy gardener's benefit: Nymphophea grows from a clump of grassy leaves that build steadily year after year, sending up more flowering spikes as the clump matures. You plant it once, do almost nothing, and the display gets more impressive every season. Deadhead spent spikes to encourage more, but if you don't, the plant will just flower at its natural pace without sulking. Hardy in zones 5 through 9 for most varieties. Some newer compact varieties like Mango Popsicle and Poco Yellow are hardy to zone 4. The main requirements are full sun and well-drained soil. It dislikes waterlogged roots over winter, so if your soil stays soggy, plant it in a raised bed or a spot with a slope. Here's a placement tip that pays off in a big way. Plant Nephofia somewhere you can see it from inside the house. The combination of its height, its flame colors, and the hummingbird activity around it makes it genuinely entertaining to watch through a window on a summer afternoon. It's a functional wildlife habitat and living artwork at the same time. Every garden needs at least one moment of real drama, one plant that makes you look twice. This is that plant. Now, let's talk about one that doesn't always get the attention it deserves. Underused, underrated, and about to get a well-earned moment. Plant number 11. Penstemon digitalis, beard tongue. You might not have grown Penstemon, but once you know what it does, you'll grow it every year from now on. Penstemon digitalis, beard tongue, is an upright, clump-forming perennial that produces tall spikes of tubular, slightly flared flowers in white flushed with soft pink from June through to August. The variety Husker Red also gives you deep burgundy red foliage that provides real visual interest from the moment it emerges in spring, long before it even thinks about flowering. The whole plant has a clean, architectural quality that works beautifully with both formal and relaxed planting styles. It's native to eastern North America. This is genuinely a plant from your own landscape, historically speaking. Hardy in zones 3 through 8. It tolerates clay soils, dry spells, and cold winters without complaint. One thing to know, Penstemon can be slightly shorter-lived than some perennials, around 3 to 5 years, but it self-seeds readily, so you'll never lose it from your garden once you have it established. Here's a small detail that will make you look at this plant differently. Penstemon's tubular flowers are shaped specifically for the long tongue of a bumblebee, but some smaller insects that can't access the nectar from the front will instead chew a tiny hole in the base of the tube to steal it from the side. Beekeepers call this nectar robbing, and if you watch closely on a warm afternoon, you'll see it happening right in your own garden. It's one of those small dramas that reminds you there's a whole world of activity going on out there that most of us never stop to look at. 2 left. Number 12 is for gardeners who want something that feels genuinely warm climate glamorous, even in a cooler American garden. Plant number 12. Agapanthus, African lily. If Agapanthus could talk, it would tell you it belongs somewhere warm, sunny, and impressive. The good news is it's a lot tougher than it looks. Agapanthus, the African lily, produces spectacular globe-shaped flower heads in deep blue-violet or white, carried on tall, elegant stems 2 to 3.5 feet high, from June through August. The flowers are made up of dozens of small trumpet-shaped florets arranged in a perfect sphere, like a botanical firework. Even after the flowers fade, the seed heads are architectural and interesting well into fall. Agapanthus loves being left alone. In fact, it flowers best when its roots are slightly cramped, which means dividing it is something you do every 5 to 7 years, not every year. Plant it in a sunny spot, give it decent drainage, and largely ignore it. Hardy varieties, look for the head-borne hybrid specifically, are reliable in zones 7 through 10. In zones 5 and 6, grow it in a large container and bring it under cover over winter. It's genuinely happy in pots, and the slight root restriction actually encourages more flowering, so the container approach isn't a compromise, it's a strategy. Blue flowers are genuinely rare in the perennial world. Most of what's sold as blue is actually purple or violet when you look closely. True blue Agapanthus, particularly the variety brilliant blue or navy blue, is one of the very few plants that delivers actual, undeniable blue. In a garden composition, true blue creates a cooling effect that makes surrounding warm colors pop. Garden designers use Agapanthus for exactly that reason. Some plants make your garden feel like it belongs in a better neighborhood. Agapanthus is absolutely one of them. And finally, the one I promised you at the very start. I saved this for last because most gardeners have never heard of it, and the ones who do grow it wonder why they waited so long. This is plant number 13. Plant number 13. Persicaria amplexicalis, mountain fleece. Persicaria amplexicalis, mountain fleece, sometimes called red bistort, is the plant that experienced gardeners grow and quietly feel smug about. Because almost nobody else has it, and it is extraordinary. This is a large, clump-forming perennial that produces hundreds of slim, upright flower spikes in intense crimson red or soft pink in gentler varieties, from June right through to the first hard frosts of October. Let me say that again, June to October. 5 months of continuous flowering from a single perennial. There is almost nothing else in the plant world that delivers that kind of sustained color without deadheading, staking, or any significant effort on your part. The foliage is bold and handsome, with large, paddle-shaped leaves that form dense, weed-suppressing clumps. Once a Persicaria clump is established, nothing much grows underneath it, which means it does your weeding for you while simultaneously being beautiful from above. That is a genuinely uncommon combination. The lazy gardener payoff is as good as it gets, no deadheading needed because it's constantly producing new spikes. No staking because the growth is naturally self-supporting. No winter protection is needed in most American zones. Just an enormous, generous, color-rich clump that builds wider and more impressive with every passing year. Hardy in zones 4 through 8. It grows best in moist, reasonably fertile soil, but adapts to average garden conditions without complaint. Full sun to partial shade, one of the few plants on this list that genuinely performs beautifully in both. When it comes to varieties, look for Firetail for the most intense crimson red, Alba if you prefer a cleaner white, and Blackfield for a deeper, darker wine red. One practical note: Persicaria amplexicalis is essentially unknown in mainstream garden centers. You'll need to seek it out from a specialist perennial nursery, online, or in person. But it is absolutely worth the effort. Once you grow it, you'll understand immediately why experienced gardeners consider it one of the very best all-season perennials in existence. It's also nearly unkillable under normal garden conditions, which in a plant is a quality that deserves far more celebration than it usually gets. So there you have it, 13 long-lasting perennials you can plant right now in June, every single one of them designed to carry your garden from early summer all the way into fall, and every one of them coming back to do it again next year without you starting from scratch. We had the violet-blue double-blooming spikes of Salvia, the wildlife-feeding resilience of Echinacea, the lavender-scented cascades of Catmint, and the heat-proof endurance of Daylilies. We covered the golden 3-month blaze of black-eyed Susan, the clean upright brightness of Shasta daisy, and the near-endless flowering of Geranium roseanne. We found Yarrow for the hot, dry spots, Astilbe for the shady, damp corners, and the hummingbird-drawing drama of red-hot poker. We gave some long-overdue attention to Penstemon, added real glamour with agapanthus, and finished with the hidden gem that most gardeners still haven't discovered, Persicaria amplexicalis and its extraordinary 5-month flowering season. No constant replanting. No complicated care routines. Just rich, layered, long-lasting color, from June all the way to the first frost. Year after year. If this helped you, hit subscribe. We share new no-fuss gardening guides every single week. And drop a comment below. Which of these plants are you planning to try first? I read every single one.